Speaking of tourists, it appears the Vatican has not been getting enough of them since the pandemic began. A lack of tourists this past year has resulted in a drastic drop in revenue for the Catholic Church. This as Pope Francis begins the second year of Easter celebrations disrupted by COVID. Chris Livesay is in Rome. So Chris, what can you tell us what's going on at the Vatican?
Good morning, Anne-Marie. Well, this is not the Holy Week that Pope Francis wanted. Speaking on Palm Sunday, he said that the devil is taking advantage of the pandemic, which now for 2 years in a row, well, it's taking not just a toll on people's lives, but also on the collection plates.
He's long been called the People's Pope, but since the pandemic, he's been the Pope with no people. And pontiff or not, it's the virus that still reigns at the Vatican during Holy Week, more than a year after the outbreak first exploded in Italy. Especially painful for the Pope, the absence of pilgrims during what's normally the busiest week at the Vatican. In the past year, diminishing donations and closures at the Vatican museums have left a hole that's both spiritual and financial, says CBS News Vatican contributor Monsignor Anthony Figueiredo.
2020, $108 million shortfall, 25% less revenues. It's led to even the cardinals having a cut in their salaries of 10%. So there is real concern because we have both the fall in numbers in Catholics, a loss of credibility for the Church because of the sexual abuse crisis, and now the pandemic. It's like being in a boxing ring and not knowing where the next punch is coming from.
But the pandemic didn't stop Francis from taking a daring visit last month to Iraq, the first ever for a pope, praying in churches once ransacked by ISIS and gathering with thousands of people like we haven't seen in a year. All made possible by the COVID vaccine for him and his entourage. This week, the Vatican is paying it forward, vaccinating 1,200 poor and homeless, many from around St. Peter's Square, among the rare few who can actually be here during Holy Week.
He understands that not being able to go to his flock is going to have long-term consequences. Will they come back? That's the big challenge.
And another victim of COVID, the Pope's washing of the feet of the poor and the destitute. That would normally take place today, but for now, it's been canceled. Nevertheless, we know that Pope Francis is desperate to be among the people. In fact, Vatican watchers tell us we may yet be in for a surprise. Anne-Marie?
Oh, that's interesting. Let's talk about sort of the last bit of your story there. The Vatican has started vaccinating the poor and the homeless. What more can you tell us about that effort?
Well, so they actually started in January with about 50 people, also poor or homeless. This was at the express request of Pope Francis. When he was getting his Pfizer shot, he wanted to share the love, shall we say, and this is now a continuation of that same project. In fact, the Vatican was also testing people before the vaccine was available. Again, homeless and poor, that was really useful for them because they would need a negative test result in many cases to get access to a homeless shelter. And keep in mind that due to a lot of the charity services that the Vatican offers right here around St. Peter's Square, there is a very large homeless community that's right here. In fact, they're some of the only people that you see around. So the need for testing and, of course, for the vaccine here is very great.
You know, of course, the Vatican is sort of the center of Roman Catholic life, but they also have an incredible art collection. So it's not just Catholics that are drawn to the Vatican to spend time and to spend money there. Besides the cardinals having their salary cut, how else is the loss of tourism revenue impacting the Vatican?
Yeah, well, cardinals aren't the only ones taking a haircut right now. Also, priests and nuns who work at the Vatican, they're getting a pay cut as low as 3%. Then you have other day-to-day workers who aren't members of the cloth. They've been told that they won't be getting a pay cut, but they also won't be getting any pay raises that they'd normally get to keep up with inflation. There's also a hiring freeze at the Vatican. So, you know, it's being felt all across the Vatican, and it's a lot of money that they've lost. We're talking about more than $100 million. A big chunk of that comes from the Vatican museums, as you mentioned, where people pay for, you know, expensive tickets to go and see these magnificent works of art. In 2019, right before the pandemic, they had about 8 million tickets sold, and now it's down by about 75%. So you can imagine what that's doing to the coffers here.
Yeah, I can imagine. This is the second Easter during the pandemic. What will the ceremonies look like at the Vatican this year?
Well, they'll kind of look like what you're seeing right now. Unfortunately, not very many people, as we saw in the Mass this morning inside of St. Peter's. Lots of social distancing, lots of masks. Not a lot of people. We only had about 200 people inside of this sprawling basilica. It's the largest in the world by most measures, and it's going to be that way for the remainder of all of the masses held here during Holy Week.
Just really quickly, Chris, you know, businesses all around the world have had to sort of pivot and figure out other ways of making money. Is the Vatican trying to do that as well?
The Vatican, more than anything right now, is trying to stop the bleeding. Now, it does have alternative ways of making money. It has a lot of real estate holdings, not just here in Rome and Italy, but also around the world. But as we know, the pandemic has been pretty hard on property owners as well, especially people who counted on making money through things like rent. So right now they're doing everything they can to just consolidate their losses and to prevent themselves from losing any more. I spoke to a Vatican expert just before going on air, and he told me that the vaccine is their only hope.
Well, that is echoed all around the world. Chris Livesay, thank you so much.